She knew he had just been put down a minute ago. What could have caused him to disappear so quickly? Was her mommy's brain affecting her? She came into the room to find him holding the baby just when she heard the gurgles coming from the lounge. While crying and laughing, the baby was unaware of what had just happened to him. It was a cozy evening in Louise Ann Taylor's suburban home as she sat with her newborn son nestled in her arms. Throughout the room, the soft sounds of lullabies played, creating a serene atmosphere for the young mother. Louise was left alone with her precious bundle of joy by her husband, who had gone out to run some errands. Her unexpected visitors were about to arrive. Despite being a new mother, Louise Ann was a loving and warm-hearted woman. In Redwood, Alabama, she lived with her husband, in-laws, and her brand-new baby, Blake, in a quaint suburban house. The sadness lingered in the air, but Louise still took the initiative to make Jack feel loved and included. Louise had moved in with Jack, an 88-year-old with silver hair and a kind smile, to help with the baby. When Louise Ann's in-laws moved in with her, she lived a picturesque life as a vibrant young mother. It was a cozy home filled with love and the joyful cries of Blake, her newborn son. She watched as Jack, her father-in-law, an 88-year-old man with a heart full of old-world tales, and Patrice clung to the few years she had left with wit and grace. Even though it was an uncomfortable living situation with 3 small bedrooms, they managed to make it work. Louise couldn't help but be grateful to her father-in-law, Jack, who had moved into their family's home after their baby was born, as she gazed down at Blake's peaceful face. Known for his kindness, Jack was always willing to lend a helping hand. As Jack played with Blake in the house, his laughter filled the air. Louise cherished these moments. The presence of Jack initially allowed Louise to focus on her work and gave Blake the attention he deserved. Louise noticed Jack's behavior changing as days turned into weeks. Almost possessively, he started to hold Blake for hours on end. It seemed at first like a sweet bond between grandfather and grandson. It wasn't until later that she realized the old man's behavior had a deeper meaning. Louise felt a twinge of worry as she watched Jack cradle Blake in his arms. The air was filled with an unusual smell after Jack had been holding the baby for hours. A frown spread across Louise's face as she contemplated the situation. Her face was etched with concern as she approached Jack cautiously. As much as her father-in-law had done for her, she didn't want to offend him. When Louise approached her father-in-law, she asked, "Jack, are things okay?" without sounding accusatory. There was no point in scaring the old man who was lost in his own world. The smile on Jack's face didn't quite reach his eyes. As a prim and proper man, he never liked being questioned. "Oh, everything's fine, Louise. Just bonding with little Blake." She grew increasingly uneasy as the days passed. Her spine tingled when she overheard Jack's comments. A sinister tone crept into Jack's voice as he wondered, "He doesn't look much like Michael." Jack would gossip with his wife, Patrice, who shunned him. She became increasingly irritated with him as they aged. Initially, Louise dismissed it as the result of exhaustion from caring for a newborn. Louise began to worry that her newborn son was being held too much. She was advised not to carry him too much by the doctor. However, with his grandparents living with him, Blake received 3 times the dose. Comments continued to be made, becoming nastier by the day. Louise's spine was chilled when Jack sneered, "Maybe he takes after his real father." Jack's behavior around Blake seemed off to her. One evening, when Michael was away, Louise walked into the nursery to find Jack holding Blake again. The room was filled with an uncomfortable silence, broken only by the rhythmic creaking of the rocking chair. Louise's eyes narrowed as she noticed the intensity of Jack's gaze. "Jack, you've been spending an awful lot of time with Blake," Louise said, her voice shaky. Jack's face contorted into an unsettling grin. "He's just such a special little guy. I can't help myself." He was stroking Blake's forehead in a strange way that Louise didn't like. Louise's worry turned into fear. She snatched Blake from Jack's arms, a protective instinct kicking in. "You need to back off, Jack. This is our son, not yours." Jack's demeanor shifted instantly. His eyes burned with aggression, and his jaw clenched. "You should be grateful I'm here to help. I just want what's best for my grandson." He threw the blanket on the floor and marched out of the room angrily. The confrontation left Louise unsettled. As she lay in bed that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that Jack's intentions were far from innocent. She wondered why he had become so aggressive around the baby, questioning the safety of her son in the hands of the man she once thought she could trust. Sleep eluded her as she pondered the mystery of Jack's unsettling behavior, fearful of what secrets might lie beneath the surface. What could she do to get her baby back? Louise tried to keep Blake on a scheduled routine, but Jack would pick him up whenever he was alone in his crib. Louise was about to lose it. But then came the smell. Louise began to catch a whiff of an unusual odor when she entered the room where Jack spent time with Blake. What was he doing in there? Something was amiss. Unease settled in her stomach, prompting her to confront Jack gently. "Dad, I appreciate your help with Blake, but is everything okay? I noticed a strange smell." Jack chuckled nervously. "Oh, it's probably nothing. Just an old cream I've been using on the little fella. Keeps his skin smooth and soft, you know." He showed her an herbal lotion with camphor inside, which was safe for babies. Louise sighed in relief, accepting the explanation. But a nagging feeling lingered. Days turned into nights, and Jack's behavior escalated. He began making unsettling comments, claiming that Blake didn't look like his son. Louise brushed it off, thinking it was just the ramblings of an elderly man with a fading memory. She wished that her husband would return from his work trip so he could deal with his own parents. One day, at her wit's end, Louise decided to set up a hidden camera in the living room, discreetly capturing Jack's interactions with Blake. As she reviewed the footage, her heart sank. Jack was in and out of lucid thinking, confusing Blake with his own son from decades ago. Louise witnessed the heartbreaking moments when Jack applied a familiar cream to Blake, just as he used to do for her late husband when he was a baby. Tears welled up in Louise's eyes as she watched the footage, realizing that Jack was battling Alzheimer's disease. The man who had once been a pillar of strength for her family was now lost in the labyrinth of his own memories. The situation had gone far beyond simple forgetfulness. It was a heartbreaking journey through the unraveling mind of a once vibrant man. Jack actually had no clue that he was doing or saying the things he was. Louise sat down with Jack, gently holding his trembling hands. "Dad," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I understand now. We'll get through this together." The old man laughed it off. He barely knew his daughter-in-law either, and every day was a struggle for him. Louise realized that it was time for her father-in-law to get a proper diagnosis from the hospital. In the midst of the pain and confusion, a new chapter began for Louise and Jack, where love and understanding would guide them through the challenges of Alzheimer's. They would navigate the intricate maze of memories together, cherishing moments of clarity and finding solace in the warmth of their shared family history. Louise became the support Jack needed in his son's absence. As Louise juggled the demands of motherhood and work, she noticed Jack's interest in spending time with little Blake. At first, it seemed like a loving gesture, a grandfather doting on his grandson. But as the days passed, Louise grew increasingly uneasy. Jack would cradle Blake for hours, refusing to let him go. Perhaps she was looking at things from the wrong perspective. This could be detrimental to Blake. Concerned, Louise decided to confront the situation. "Dad, it's wonderful that you want to spend time with Blake, but it's essential to share him with me too," she gently remarked. The old man was lost, telling a story to baby Blake, as though it was his own son. Louise teared at the thought, realizing that Jack was showing more serious signs than she thought. Jack smiled, his eyes betraying a hint of confusion. "He doesn't look like my son," he said cryptically, leaving Louise puzzled. He was pointing at Blake's face, his old wrinkled finger shaking as he tried to point out his nose and chin. "This is not like my boy was when he was a baby," he said again. Louise was starting to get annoyed at the nonsense Jack was speaking. Worried about her son's well-being, Louise observed Jack more closely. The smell of a peculiar cream filled the air whenever he held Blake. Curiosity turned to alarm when Jack started making unsettling comments, insisting that Blake wasn't his son. What was he trying to insinuate about Louise? That she cheated on her husband? At her wits' end, Louise decided to take matters into her own hands. She discreetly planted a camera in the nursery, hoping to unravel the mystery behind Jack's bizarre behavior. When she reviewed the footage, shock and sadness gripped her heart. Baby Blake was Jack's way of reliving his past. He felt young again when he retold his stories to his grandson. He had no idea that he was spending that many hours with the baby. The video revealed Jack's struggle with Alzheimer's. In moments of lucidity, he believed Blake to be his own son, reliving memories of his past. He even found an old baby outfit of her husband's and put it on for the little chap. Tears welled up in Louise's eyes as she witnessed Jack tenderly applying the familiar cream to Blake's delicate skin, just as he had done for her husband years ago. How could she stop something so pure and innocent? Louise, torn between heartache and responsibility, summoned her husband to watch the distressing footage. Luckily, Michael was home that week, so she could tell him everything he missed. As they sat in front of the screen, emotions roller-coasted through them. "We need to get him help," Louise declared, her voice firm with determination. Michael was still in shock, realizing that his father wasn't the man he once was. Michael tried to get through to his mother, Patrice, who was also senile. Together, they sought professional assistance and placed Jack in a specialized care facility. The transition was bittersweet, as they watched the man who once cared for their family enter a new chapter of his life. They wondered if old Jack knew what was happening. He thought that they were going on holiday. In the facility, Jack found moments of comfort in his confused reality, surrounded by caregivers who understood his needs. They got his parents an adjoining room so they could both have their privacy. Louise and her husband visited regularly, bringing photos and stories from their life to share with Jack. But it wasn't enough. He begged them to bring baby Blake over so he could hold him himself. As the days passed, Blake continued to grow, unaware of the complexities that had unfolded in his young life. The Taylor couple captured hundreds of photos of Blake with his grandpa. And though Jack's memories faded, the love and care he had once showered upon his family lingered as a testament to a bond that transcended the limitations of time and memory. And when Blake grew up, he would always know that his grandfather was there for him,